Hey guys, this is On Fire Fitness. I'm your host, Mitch Stokes, and we have a special guest with us today. Jake Hendricks here on the show was a local kid, grew up here in the small town of New Ringgold, Pennsylvania, for those of you that know where it is. And he's just returning from his first year at the University of Pennsylvania. He's a student athlete. He's a freshman, just finished. And he's here to talk about his experiences, do's and don'ts, the things he found challenging. And hopefully it's helpful for some of you guys. We're in graduation week for you high schoolers that are going into your first year of college after the summer's over. So it's a good one for you to listen to. Parents, coaches, if you're listening, you might want to tune in. I'm trying to remember what year, Jake, was it when you first came into the gym, like you and your brother?
I mean, I think it was the first year he was doing it, so...
It's like a good 3 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, either the end of my sophomore year or beginning of my junior year
of
high school.
Okay. So, it probably would have been like over the summer.
Yeah.
Or actually, you know what? I want to say it might have been a holiday break.
Yeah, because when I had all my friends over...
Yeah, you had all the boys from SEM down here. Yeah, that was good. We had a little workout.
Strongman workout, 7 a.m. every morning.
Rope climbs, stone lifts.
Sled pushes,
sled
pushes.
Oh, yeah. It was like, what was it, 7 minutes, go as far as you can.
Yeah.
Big laps. Yeah. Yeah, it was good. That was fun. Yeah, you guys were so young. And your brother was like 12 or 11.
Yeah, he was still smaller than me. Now he's not.
Yeah, he's huge now. For those of you that don't know, Jake and his brother Luke both have trained here on and off over the last few years. Originally, Luke was the first one that came in. I think your dad brought him in to start some weightlifting. And since then, I mean, he's in line for a top podium spot this year as a 14 to 15-year-old, possibly gold.
Yeah, I keep telling him. I mean, he's getting stronger than me, but...
Oh, he's strong as hell.
I know. It's hard. I got to choke him out. I can't even wrestle him anymore.
Yeah, tell me about it. I just roughhouse with him a little bit in here every once in a while, and I feel like so outmatched.
Well, he knows he's like big now too, because like the smallest thing, and we'll start like wrestling just like on our driveway or something, and it's just so quick now. He's getting through puberty and everything. He thinks he's big boy now.
Oh yeah,
going after everything.
Oh yeah, he's got an attitude. He walks out with the chest out. That's okay though. He's got some confidence now. Completely different kid from 3 years ago.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So let's talk about how you got here. Your high school education, Jake. Talk just a little bit about SEM, boys SEM.
School-wise, I mean, they call themselves a college preparatory school, and I mean, I guess for most colleges it helps, but going into the Ivy League it was different. I mean, you get a lot of I think you get more choices there. You kind of don't really have that much choice. Freshman, sophomore year, they kind of give you classes, but then you can start taking AP classes, and I kind of ran through like math and science. That was kind of my stuff. But I mean, it started to switch more to a college schedule once I was done. We kind of started off like you just go through like 9 periods in a day, and then it switched off to block schedule where you'd have some classes some day. So that was a good change. But it was definitely, I think, a good time having that freedom, kind of choosing your own path ahead of time, so you're not going into college like undecided on majors and stuff.
Less lost, a little bit more structure.
Yeah.
You got some direction. Now, what year did you start there? Was it freshman year?
Yeah.
Okay. And did you look at other schools beforehand?
So I was young, so the whole change came because, like, a lot of the guys I wrestled with were holding back and stuff, and my old coached me since I started wrestling, Todd Kindig. He was at Hamburg at the time, so we were thinking either I was going to do like a homeschool repeat 8th grade or go to Hamburg. And then Ryan Gears actually was up at SEM and we were talking to him. I went up to a couple practices, and then pretty much my whole 8th grade year I would go up after school or even leave school like end of the day, drive up, practice at SEM, come home.
This is when you were at Hamburg or Blue Mountain?
Blue Mountain. I never went to Hamburg.
That's right.
But the changing was coming because I was considering going there because of Kindig being there.
Yep. Yeah, did he coach you when you were in junior high?
I mean, club. He's pretty much coached me
Yeah.
since I was 5, ever since.
No kidding?
Yeah, I started wrestling.
Wow. So you ended up at Boys Sem, And you made it through the 4 years. You felt like you got a pretty good benefit out of it.
Yeah. I mean, it was good, especially balancing high-level wrestling with a good education.
Yeah, talk about the wrestling program up there.
Coming into it, I mean, I knew a lot of the guys who were there just because of coming up 8th grade year. Bunch of nice guys, bunch of psychos too, quite a few of them. But my freshman year, we switched wrestling rooms to the Great Hall, which is like an entire old bank that's stripped down, threw mats in there. So that became like the whole wrestling facility, which was really nice. We were kind of stuck to like a room with a little kind of like panhandle coming off of it that we'd have to split practices. People were getting thrown into walls and stuff, which, I mean, that definitely broke me a couple times my 8th grade year, getting thrown into the walls by like seniors, juniors. But we switched to the Great Hall. It became like a lot kind of better atmosphere because we were kind of isolated. It was like a kind of sanctuary when it came to wrestling. And then coming up through...
What do you mean by sanctuary? Like, there's no distractions?
Yeah, because it's on the very like outskirt of the campus up there. So, okay. And it was only ever wrestlers in there. There's like they'd have to come in there to like take stuff because it was used as storage beforehand. Mm-hmm. But once we put all the wrestlers in there, it was just a lot easier to focus. You weren't like mid practice going to the bathroom and there's like teams in the locker room, in the old wrestling room and everything. There's not other stuff going on. Just come in there. And I would say definitely the physical, the physicality in the wrestling room picked up a lot. Crash pads up against the marble wall. Yeah. Like, there were some brawls, because kind of at the beginning of the year, what a lot of people call shark bait, which we will normally call it where one person's in, just people are switching on them. We'll call it Iron Man at the beginning of the year. So probably about the first week of practice on the mat, one person's in for 6 minutes. Mm-hmm. And everybody's switching, but it's not like trying to take them down. It's like you'll take them down, and they're like getting up slow, trying to take their time. You're picking them up so the next dude can double them across the room, and you're just you're breaking kids like that first week. And it's always like 3 or 4 returning guys with one new guy at that weight. Mm-hmm. And all the returning guys know like you got to get in there first. So the first 4 guys are all returning guys, and then that new guy's dead last. Just everybody's just dogging on him. And you feel bad about it until you remember back to when you were the one in the middle, and then you're like, yeah, everybody kind of has to go through this.
Yeah, it's a culture builder, and it's similar to like when I was in the military, especially over at the Bud Center. It seems unnecessary to people outside that community. Yeah. Like, really need to do that. But yeah, because I know that the other guy... the instructor staff that's standing over me and yelling at me went through the exact, if not worse, back in their heyday. And the guy behind me, who's younger than me, he's going to go through the same crap. So we all have an equal bit of respect, and there's some camaraderie. Yeah. Like I think it makes the team a little bit more tight-knit.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a couple guys, too, new guys, like they might not be freshmen, but they might be coming in like sophomore, juniors. And they'll break for that first minute, and then they get out of it, and they already flick the switch. And then when they come in on someone, they're like picking them up and running them all the way across the wrestling room and like landing just shoulder straight to their chest. Yeah. But yeah, that's definitely kind of a big part of the beginning of the year because no one really talks about it. Mm-hmm. And then Coach Green would be like, all right, groups of 6. And then you see all the returning guys like look at each other, and all the new guys are like, oh, like what are we doing, like team building or something? God. We're like, yeah, call it team building if you want.
I remember track and field as a kid. They called it the campus run. Like, all right, guys, go on a campus run. It happened every year. It was like very early in the season. That was code for everyone's going to go for a jog together over to the market. And you know that nasty pond, that cesspool? All the seniors are going to throw the freshmen in. Yeah. It wasn't like, it lasted 10 seconds, but no one talked about it. Just like you knew that was going to happen each year.
Yeah. There's a couple things, like just like that Ironman where it's just like you kind of get more of it throughout the year as people are cutting weight and stuff too. Like the new guys who maybe just don't have the experience, you'll see the guy cutting weight, he'll grab him for live goes and not even wrestle him, just pound the shit out of his head, throw him into the ground, trip him, like not let him get back up. But then you see those kids the next year kind of come up through it, and that's how I did. Actually, the worst experience I had So his name was, I wrestled him a little bit when I was in 8th grade coming up. And then freshman year, we did these sprints on back campus, which is like this just big grass behind pretty much in the middle of campus. We were running sprints, but then we'd come back and do like 1 minute hand fighting goes. And then, so Danny Boychuk this year, he was a senior, and we started calling him Man Chuck because he started taking like deer antler, and he went from like a 126 pounder to about 160 pounds of just like pure muscle.
Wow.
And he was pounding on me. His hair was like rubbing my forehead open. He was pushing me into bushes. My back was bleeding. And then just like the next few days, I had like scabs all over my forehead. My back was all bloody. But then kind of throughout that year, it became like, wow, like he can actually kind of handle that stuff. Because I was like laughing. I didn't know what else to do. Like freshman, it's about 10, 15 pounds lighter than him. I was like, I can't do anything right now.
No. Now, let's talk about the your application process. Now you're at UPenn. Why UPenn? How did it end up? Did you apply to other schools beforehand? Did you have a couple other choices?
So I only visited Penn because I actually went down to visit one of my really good friends from SEM who went down there. So I visited once my beginning of my junior year without like really talking to coaches because it was unofficial.
Yeah.
And then I did again at the end of my junior year. I came down with him. I really talked to Mike McMullen when he was still there because he went to SEM too, so he was through the whole thing. He was a 4-time All-American from Northwestern. And then I kind of recruited under him. I committed on the house visits when coaches can visit house, like starting July 1st between my senior year.
Can I rewind for a second? Now you mentioned like official visit, unofficial visit. Can you explain to like some of the kids what that means?
Yeah. So they NCAA is like making it harder, kind of. They switched it to juniors can take official visits, but it's still limited to 5 official visits.
Yeah.
So unofficial visits, the coaches can't pay for anything, so everything's on your own.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure if it's before your junior year, the coaches can't reach out to you.
Yeah, they can't.
So you would have to reach out to the coaches to come down.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people don't understand is like, don't always wait for coaches. I think now it's like almost the end of your sophomore year, they can start talking to you.
Yeah.
And then official visits, coaches will pay for your visit. They set up a schedule pretty much for the full weekend. Like you'll visit classes, you'll visit, like if you know what you want to major in, you can visit that department. You can watch a practice. The one rule is like for wrestling, I don't know, I'm pretty sure it's the same for other sports, but the coaches can't watch you practice. Yeah. So you could still practice when you're down there if you want to get a feel for the room.
Yeah. You
could come in like open. If you know like someone on the team, I'm pretty sure you can go in the room. But the coaches can't be there to observe the practice.
They can't be coaching you actively.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. So kind of UPenn was like on your radar from the get-go?
Yeah.
Like when did you make that decision? Like when you were junior, you were kind of like leaning that way?
Yeah, I was leaning that way. There were a lot of other colleges that like reached out, but then kind of didn't set up visits because it's kind of hard because they're trying to set up official visits.
Yeah.
And at my point, they could only do them senior year, so you had to wait. And Penn was close, so it's not that far of a drive for me. So doing those unofficials, met a whole bunch of guys on the team, stayed in close contact with them, and then on the house visit, McMullen was the first one there. Committed under him, and then we kind of made fun of this because that was a year that I went to World's End, and on the way back, I'm checking my phone. It's like, oh, we want to send our hopes to Mike McMullen as he continues coaching at Northwestern. I was like, wait, what? Like I was the one who committed under. I was the first one to commit under him. Yeah. So then he went to Northwestern, and then he didn't even stay there for a full year. So like, I didn't take it to heart, but I made fun of him plenty of times. I saw him a couple of times at SEM, but I was like, my dad was making fun of him, and then my dad, he talked to all the coaches. He's like, all right, are you going to stay or are you going to leave? He had to go through every coach. Yeah.
Yeah, the last thing an athlete wants to do is commit, like, especially if it's a coach that's sought offer. Like, certain people want to wrestle for certain people or want to play football somewhere because of that specific coach. Yeah. Like, right now, Penn State has a pretty big pull with wrestling.
Yeah.
Kids seek out that they want a chance to wrestle for Sanderson.
Yeah.
Understandable. So, like, the last thing they want is, like, to get there and commit, and then, like, the guy leaves. Like, not that would happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
So you ended up at UPenn. Now, what are you majoring in?
Bioengineering.
Okay. And why that?
So 2 reasons. I'm really interested in, like, kind of working with the military for, like, advanced prosthetics, like robotic arms and legs for wounded soldiers.
That's awesome.
And working not just for them who are wounded, but, like, people who want to get back into action and, like, kind of using it as another piece of equipment, so going ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other reason is I kind of like to live my, like, own life, like, do what I want, kind of find my own way. And both sides of my family have cancer. My mom passed away from an aneurysm.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm going to get one of the two. Like, I've accepted that, but I don't want to live the lifestyle where I have to avoid certain things so I don't get them.
Yeah.
Where if
You'd rather wear out.
No, not even that. I'd rather sit down and solve the problem myself or talk to other people who can and work it out that way.
Okay.
And fix it myself. I mean, even same for my brother too, because he has the same risk I do.
Yeah.
So just kind of fixing that ahead of time and not having to kind of listen to other people and be like, do this, don't do this, don't do this.
Yeah.
And then kind of live a restricted lifestyle. So
Yeah, don't let anything get in your way.
yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Now, as far as the acceptance process went, now how did that go? You finally sent your application in.
Yeah, I early decision, and I know for a lot of sports, so they'll review your transcripts beforehand, and they'll look, and they'll be like, all right, so he has this % chance to get in, and the coaches can push for certain people, and they'll be like, all right, these people can get in. So they'll be like, all right, you guys submit your early decisions, because you guys, like, we can get you in.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of the other guys, if they're kind of either needed to take their test again, or some of the guys who are, like, super smart and can get in without a push from the coaches.
Yeah, now what kind of testing do they have?
I mean, they just have, like, the SAT, ACT,
Okay, gotcha.
subject tests.
Now, what was your SAT score?
I got a 1490. I was supposed to take it again.
Really?
Never took it with the essay. That was the only test I took.
Uh-huh.
And then I submitted my early decision and got in.
So you never had to redo?
Yeah, I guess I think part of it had to do is because my junior year I had 4 AP tests, and then my senior year I took like 4 AP tests.
Yeah.
So like I was already heavy loaded on some of the courses, but I know there were a couple guys on the team who took it again, and I know that there were probably 1 or 2 guys who got pushed from early decision just to get accepted on their normal application because they were going to get in anyway, whether for grades or for just other things they've done.
Mm-hmm. So what month was it that you found out that it was a definite?
I think December.
Okay, so you were in mid-season.
Yeah.
Of your senior year. Okay. Now, when did you report?
I was on one of the earlier days. I came down over the summer and stayed with some of the older guys on the team who had an apartment for a week for practicing, and just to get closer with some of the guys. And then I moved in August 21st, but we didn't start school till like the 27th.
Yeah.
They kind of we call it NSO, like New Student Orientation.
Mm-hmm.
And you just go around, and most of the stuff's like optional, like if you want to go to it, and then there's certain things that are mandatory.
Okay. Let's talk about your first year. So you're freshman, you get through the fall, like the first month or two. Yeah. Now, was there practices already?
Yeah, so Ivy League have a little bit weird rules. Like, we're only allowed 6 hours a week of practices. So we'd have 3 of lift, like 2 or 3 of like running, and then if we had that extra hour, we'd do a practice. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes we'll like take a lift away and do running instead. But we also had, which is nice, we have the PRTC, which is the Pennsylvania Regional Training Center.
Yeah.
And Coach Slate coaches at Olympic Champ in 2000. So since that's a club practice, those are like optional practices, so we could get in.
Doesn't count against the
the
hours. That's a good resource. Yeah. And then the season started off. What was that like as a freshman, a true freshman? Because some of the athletes, you guys compete outside the Ivy League, correct? So you're competing against some people that may not be true freshmen necessarily.
Because our conference EIWA is like Army, Navy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of some of the guys outside the Lehigh.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big conference. I just can't even think
There's
of
a lot of
Americans
teams
out of it.
Yeah.
But, no, I mean, you can definitely tell we had a really young team. We had like 7 of our starters were freshmen.
No kidding.
Yeah, out of the 10 guys.
Wow.
And that kind of rotated. I think at one point we had 9 starting freshmen for a duel, which is like, I mean, you can tell.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of the freshmen in the starting lineup came from schools like Blair, Bergen Catholic, Sem. Like, they'd wrestle hard, but just some of the physicality and just toughness from some of the older guys, especially like Army, Navy.
Yeah, they're grown men.
Yeah.
They're 20 years old, 21 years old. Yeah. It's quite a difference. So you get into that. Now, obviously, the primary thing for you, it's different from being like at a D1 school where, okay, maybe you're majoring in something, but your job there is to wrestle. Your job is a student right now. And the athletics is a add-on. You have a demanding schedule. Can you talk a bit about like what's that like wrestling for you, Penn?
Yeah. So I mean, the coaches are aware of it. One of our coaches, Pete Renda, just out of NC State, he's one of our assistant coaches, All-American from there. And we talked to him a little bit actually recently about kind of the difference between like a place like NC State and a place like Penn. He's like, so if we have like a final or a class, like we move our practices and practice with someone else who missed it or even one of the coaches. And he said down like NC State, you can't miss practices. Mm-hmm. Like you'd miss class over practices. And we don't do that.
I know.
And he said like the work ethic and stuff isn't very different, but just kind of the way you handle stuff regarding classes was a big difference.
It's different priorities.
Yeah. And I think what a lot of guys on the team kind of realize, and I think some of them mistreat and some handle really well, and I've talked to like my dad about it because I even had it at SEM, is like at one point either your sport or your school is going to suffer, and you have to make that decision. And I think that's what a lot of kids kind of really mess up, and that's when everything kind of goes to hell, is they'll not really realize that like you can't balance both and feel like be okay. Like one of them's going to slip, and you have to know that's going to happen, and you have to know like that you're in control of which one's going to go. Yeah,
and prepare for it ahead of time. Like, hey, this part of the semester is probably going to suffer, so maybe buckle down now so that you're not in the hole in the middle of the season where you're maintaining a grade point average going in. You don't want to be going in with like a 2.9 or 2.8 or 3.0, and then you drop even further.
Yeah. I think that there's definitely, that's like kind of misnomer, because I think you can get through most of high school. And not
especially at a public school.
Yeah. You're not going to have to really worry about one of them slipping. And if anything's going to slip, it's honestly probably going to be your sport. Yeah. And that's probably just going to be wearing out from cutting weight or if your cardio or whatever.
Yeah. Interpersonal relationships.
Yeah, that is very true.
That drives me nuts when I have a kid that's doing really well.
Yeah.
They get out on the mat or get out in the field, and then like, what is going on with this kid? We had a kid not that long ago, a couple years ago, just totally screw the pooch at a major meet for track and field. Girlfriend troubles.
Yeah.
We're scratched out of disc.
Yeah.
Like, he was a good disc thrower. He was a good athlete. And then, well, there goes that. Yeah. Senior year, done.
Yeah. At Sam Green would always say, like, Nick Green, and great wrestler, multiple-time world team member, national champ. He's at NC State right now. He blew out his knee. I've talked to him a little bit when I was down there. But Green always said that Green could only handle a girl wrestling or school, and he had to pick 2 of them.
Yeah.
And it was his girlfriend in wrestling, because he was smart. He had one of the highest scores coming into SEM, and then handled probably about 3 or a little less throughout his years. Yeah. And he could have easily been 4.0 or above. Because he'd be on his phone all class, and he'd get called on and answer the question completely perfectly and go back to his phone. He's
one of those kids that can lay his head on a book and absorb the information without thinking about it.
Yeah. But he was one. He's all right, well, I'm just going to choose school to suffer. But
now, you've gotten a good year to get to know your teammates. Do you have guys that they definitely have to try harder on certain aspects?
I mean, especially with college, because Like, for example, Penn has 4 schools. Nursing, we only have one guy on the team, and he just graduated. He's in nursing, so we don't really know. Like, that's kind of like a mystery to the team. But then the college, which is like 50%, that's like arts, sciences, like kind of everything else. And there's engineering and business. Mm-hmm. And the college, like, you can take harder classes. Like, people have up and down semesters there. Yeah. Engineering's kind of like buckled down because, first off, a lot of the classes are during our practices, so you have to try and balance those. Like, I'm pretty sure in the fall I'm going to have to move like 2 practices per week. No kidding. To make it.
Because you have multiple opportunities in the day to practice to make up time.
Yeah, I mean, we're left responsible to leave time. So, like, if we have a class at 3, we should leave time beforehand so we can practice, or make sure we have time afterwards to do it. And then business, we kind of always make fun of, like, the business guys because, like, Wharton's ridiculously hard to get into. Yeah. But then once you get in there, the classes really aren't that hard.
It's business. If you understand the concepts, Now, do you try to coordinate with, like, a training partner? Like, hey, when are you going in?
Yeah. So we kind of during the season we did this, like, we would do on Wednesdays a morning technique, like super light for an hour, and then a lift in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. And you'd set up partners then. But usually if you have to move a practice that would be later in the day, you would grab someone who wasn't practicing, or you'd talk to some of the coaches and set up a time to practice with them.
Okay. Now, travel, it's a little easier when, like, you have your competition in-house, but I went down to that one. I think it was the Army, West Point. That was a good one. It's a tough match. Yeah. But and you guys have to travel. What's the farthest you had to travel this year?
Well, for freestyle and Greco, we flew to Vegas for the Open.
Okay, but that was recently.
Yeah, in season, the furthest we went, we drove to Michigan State for an Open at the beginning of the year.
That's a long drive.
Yeah, on a bus. But we don't really travel that far because EIWA is, like, all East Coast.
Eastern, yeah.
Well, actually, we had to go to Chicago for Midlands, and then we flew down to North Carolina for our duel with Duke.
Okay. Now, how does that, if you're flying, you're on a bus? Yeah. Travel time eats up time. I mean, that's like a whole day gone, basically. How do you manage? I mean, you obviously have a heavy coursework. You have things that you're expected to have completed. There's probably some other, like, things like you have to submit online by a certain time.
Yeah. That's pretty much all our stuff.
Yeah. Like, there's very little paper handed in anymore.
It's only, like, math that we hand in,
honestly. Yeah, that's the only class I've ever taken where, like, you hand it in a piece of paper. Yeah. Like, everything else is electronic. Yeah. Like, it's turn it in or whatever. They check the documents for plagiarism and all that. Yeah. How much coursework do you think you would say that, like, you have to get done on the road, and how do you handle that?
Our coaches are pretty good with it about kind of scheduling stuff. So when we went to Midlands and North Carolina, that was over Christmas break. So we didn't miss really any school. I'm not very productive on a bus. Yeah. I don't like reading stuff. I get, like, a really bad headache. Okay, yeah. So I kind of plan ahead, and that's one thing that, like, I think you have a lot more free time in college. You just don't want to use it because
that you don't use it the right way.
Well, yeah, but even just your work is more tiring. So, like, you were high school, you could sit down and do, like, 4 hours of work at one time. You get, like, 2 math problems done, and, like, you'll do, like, a little bit of coding for science or something, and then you're done for 4 hours because your brain's just shot. Yeah. So I would kind of plan ahead, like, and I'll be like, all right, I'll get my math homework done, like, early this week, turn in my bioengineering project, do all this stuff early, and then leave, like, stuff like reading that when we get back, I can do that, like, the next day, just read through whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, you just have to retain the information. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So we talked about earlier a little bit about, going up against, you're a young team, and you yourself are fairly young. You're like one of the youngest kids in your class, probably.
Yeah, there's one guy on our team who's younger than me.
Mm-hmm. And what it's like wrestling someone that's a little bit more mature, or quite a bit more mature physically and experience-wise. I mean, you have a lot of experience for a young guy because you were on a junior Pan Am team or cadet Pan Ams?
Cadet Pan Am and cadet world team.
Yeah. And, we talked about that, about your experience in Athens, and wrestling at an international level is so different. Dealing with losses and going from being a fairly dominant athlete as a junior and senior, I mean, you had a really good record. Yeah. And then going into freshman year and having to adjust to that, like you're not the top guy in the totem pole anymore right now. You have to work your way up, and then you have all these other responsibilities. What does that feel like when, you're in a slump? You feel like, what's the longest losing streak you had this year?
There was, I don't know exactly how many matches it was, but it was probably like 2 months, and just like a lot of them were like close matches that came down to like the last second or something. And I think a lot of that had to do with, like, I can cut weight, but I couldn't make, like, 65. I was pretty, like, thin this year, but I wasn't a big, like, 74. Mm-hmm. Not that I wasn't strong, but I just, like, I was short, like, stocky, and just a lot of guys were, like, bigger with the same amount of muscle.
Oh, and they had those long arms.
Yeah.
I saw that one guy.
That's just kind of what I dealt with all year.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I had good matches in the time where I thought I wrestled really well. And then there were times, like, just through where I wouldn't have the best matches. But then kind of breaking that, I had, like, a really good match coming out of it. And it's not, like, the physicality or the strength, which I think a lot of people get confused. Is like, you see freshmen coming in, a lot of them are, like, as strong and physical as the older guys, but they don't know how to use it to, like, the best of their ability.
Yeah, the technique, experience level. Yeah, absolutely. So in other words, you didn't let it get the best of you.
Yeah. I mean, there were a couple of times where I was, like, kind of down, especially when there were, like, matches where I had, like, the lead for, like, the last minute of the third period.
You felt like you were in control of the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they get the best of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what makes or breaks. I mean, I always tell people when they say, oh, man, that was a good upside. I'm like, yeah, I like the term is one thing, but, like, watching the NCAAs, there's really no such thing. Because everyone's there because they're that good. Yeah. It's anybody's match at that point.
Well, I think the interesting thing with wrestling is as you get older, like, people think the division gets wider. And maybe at, like, national level, like, we've had Jordan Burroughs be world team member since, 2011 or something like that, 2010. But you look, like, overseas, like, he'll beat a guy one tournament, and then a month later that guy beats him. Yeah. And it's, like, just a full circle at the top on the world level. Yeah. Where, like, when you're younger, you're wrestling through, like, elementary, there's one kid who hit puberty early and completely dominates everyone.
Yeah.
And even in high school. But then you get to college, and it starts circling. A guy will beat someone 6 times in 1 year and then lose to him in the NCAA finals.
Yeah. Finally figures them out.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. After a while, you
wrestle the same guys so much.
Yeah. Like, we don't... I know there's several coaches that don't like people videoing. Yeah. If they can help it. Like, if it's not live streamed and it's just, like, a local match, like, they don't want anybody to see their kid. Yeah. Because they don't want people to figure them out by the time they go to a big tournament like states or districts or whatever. Because it's very apparent when that happens. If the kid only has, like, a few, like, 1 or 2 takedowns, and they show up and the kid's just not necessarily stalling, but finding a way to keep him from getting that tie-up that he uses, you're like, well, he obviously studied,
Yeah, I mean, that gets to college. We watch film before every match after seeing what we do. And, I mean, I think I'm pretty easy to figure out. I'm a very, like, counter-attack wrestler, especially. I mean, I developed that a lot more in freestyle and Greco because that's where I feel a lot more comfortable. And I can score from, like, throws, trips, and kind of weird moves there. Yeah. And I'm, like, the biggest thing I worked on a lot this year, especially, like, preseason, was turning a lot of the stuff that I use in freestyle and Greco and kind of changing it to make it a folk-style technique. Yeah. But there were a couple of things I got through, like I have a pretty good head pinch in freestyle and Greco. I think, like, in Vegas I scored over 40 points with a front headlock.
No kidding.
Rolling it. I worked on it a little bit at the beginning of the year and kind of using more of my throws in folk style. But, I mean, especially folk style at the college level, there's a couple outliers who can throw their own stuff into it, but I would say it's a lot simpler at the college level. Like, you see what comes through. Yeah. There's a lot more solid technique. You don't see as many crazy things. So
yeah, it's very conventional. Yeah, because you are restricted by the rules. Yeah, that's the difference with the styles. For those of you that aren't wrestlers or are not familiar with the sport of wrestling, there's several different styles. You have folk style, you have Greco, you have freestyle. I mean, there's beach wrestling and all that stuff. So, yeah, how about that?
Sambo, you can end in one move.
It's pretty aggressive.
Yeah, that's what Khabib did before.
Oh, no kidding?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Well, because he came from, what is it, Dagestan, the place in Russia where they don't even want to be considered Russian, but they're they have like the most world champs per capita like ever.
Yeah, I think I know.
They're ridiculous.
Yeah. So let's move on here. Hardest part, and not necessarily just athletics, academic, whatever, or maybe it was just personal, being away from family. Like the hardest part for you adjusting for this year.
Honestly, I mean, I've said it plenty of times. The city, there's a lot of times where I'd be inside all weekend, and I'm like, I need to be outside, and then I'd go outside, and I'd be like, I want to go back inside. Like, I'm so used to, like, being home, being able to pick up a fishing rod, go fishing, or pick up a gun and shoot for a couple hours.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there's plenty of times where, like, everybody, it'll be a nice day, we'll all be at the wrestling house, we'll be, like, playing spike ball or cornhole, and it's nice. But then there's days where someone, like, all those guys are studying, and then I'm stuck inside because I can't stand just walking around the city.
For those of you that don't know our neck of the woods, I mean, the town here, the main town, Orgersburg, is like 3,000 or less. Yeah. How big is New Ringgold?
Yeah, and I'm not even in New Ringgold.
Yeah, you're like on the outskirt, rural, super rural.
I mean, I would say, honestly, it's probably less than like 300 people easily.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know because there's so many like houses that are just hidden in
little
the woods
nooks
as you drive by.
Yeah, we live out in a very remote area of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't get much more remote other than like where Carter's from.
Yeah.
That's even more remote. Up in the northern reaches of PA, we're probably about 2 hours, give or take, from Philly. And
it's about an hour 40 if you don't hit traffic.
Yeah, and it's like another world up here. Growing up here, like you said, you can just pick up a fishing rod, go you can get on a four-wheeler. If you want to shoot in your backyard, nobody calls the cops. Like, that's normal around here.
Well, even if they do, the cops won't come.
Yeah, they're like, say again, they're what? It's okay, it's the middle of the day. We're not concerned about it. It sounds like they're target practicing, shooting clays, whatever, hunting, fishing. It's a completely different world. I think it's a great world to grow up in. As much as I do enjoy city life here and there in doses, and I lived in the city of San Diego for about 7 years. But when I did come home, it made me appreciate where I come from. Yeah. Like, there may be certain things that you can't get here.
Yeah, I learned that up at SEM. I was never like super thankful. For like living. I mean, I was never bored or anything. I always did stuff, but I never realized even when I went to SEM, like even in Wilkes-Barre, just at certain points, I'd be like, wow, I can't wait to just be home outside.
Yeah, it's a different world. And being down in Philadelphia, I mean, it's like you're just, even when you're outside in some section of the city, you feel like you're in the dark because the buildings are so tall. The natural light's not really coming through. I mean, you may be on a certain side of the building that like never gets light. Yeah.
I'm just glad that Penn is like West Philly, where it's like kind of the older city. If it was like the newer city, I can't stand that. When I spent that day in New York, like I told you.
Oh, yeah, in
like
Manhattan.
2 hours before we were supposed to leave, and I could not stand it. I sat down in a restaurant for like 2 hours with everyone. I was like, I cannot stand being around this city any longer.
Yeah, it's the crowdedness, the natural light, the lack of fresh air.
Just the amount of people, like it's always just chatter in your ear.
Yeah, the chatter. There's constant noise, and then people are just. Philly's not quite as bad. I mean, people can be rude. It's Philadelphia, but New York is a different animal. Yeah. It's like, hi. Get out of my way. Or people will just walk right through you. They don't care who you are. It's a different mentality. Everyone's trying to get somewhere. It's like a big rat race. So you would say that's probably the biggest adjustment in city life. Yeah,
and I mean, and saying that even though Philly's like the only city I can stand being in.
Yeah.
But I would just say on that part of it, like, because I remember going back to the application, a lot of people were like, pick a place where you can stand being. But I think that nothing kind of beats like certain things. Like I could not pick a college like where I live. Yeah. Like I don't think there would be one like that. So I think location, people try and always put that like so high up.
The closest would be like somewhere out in the Midwest, like Nebraska or something like that. But then you may not have the program that you want. Yeah. Whether it's the athletic or the academic program, like you have to kind of go where it suits you.
Location wasn't like a big thing for me because I kind of knew like I was going Ivy League, so I was like, I'm gonna end up in a city or like a bigger town. Yeah. So it was like at this point, just pick the lesser of the two evils.
And you're close. You're only 2 hours away. I mean, under 2 hours away. It's not a big chore to get back up here if you're coming home for the holiday. Whereas a kid who's coming from Arizona and has to spend all day in the damn airport to get home, you can. Now, do you have a car down there? Or are you?
No.
You're on a bicycle, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one of my friends. He's actually from like Slatington.
Oh, nice. That's
Yeah.
not too far away.
Yeah, I was actually just over hanging out with him last night.
Mm-hmm.
But he has an apartment and he has like his car with all his parking. So a couple of times like we went fly fishing. We found a place like outside of the city.
Nice.
And when he drives home, I can like ride up to his house and it's a lot shorter. So.
Have you ever spent any time in Delaware over the years?
When I was way younger, I haven't
Yeah.
gone there since I was in Philly.
Yeah, if you like fishing, you want to try something different.
Yeah.
My uncle he's like retired down in Delaware now, and it's not far from where you're at.
Yeah.
Now. You can get right over across the state line, like surf fishing on the beach.
Yeah, we went
it's
shark
awesome.
fishing when I was like 6 or 7 down there.
Yeah, that's pretty fun.
Went like crabbing and everything.
It's
But I
good
barely
time.
remember it, but
Yeah,
I
it's
remember
always something to
doing
get into if you want to try something different with your buddies. What was your favorite thing about the transition going into college and being down there? Or what did you like about it?
I would say so. The point of a lack of schedule, and I would say that as I never thought of myself who like works well on a schedule, but coming out of high school, like the schedule is pretty set. Classes during the day, practice, and then kind of homework. Where in college, like the beginning of the year, the freedom to like kind of pick stuff, like I was kind of like really bad with my schedule, and once we got into season, like that kind of hurt a little bit.
Yeah.
Like I definitely felt like not having a set schedule, but then having that freedom to kind of set my own schedule and make adjustments and kind of feel that like adulthoodness was probably the best part. Like there were times where I could be like, all right, well, I'm already done working, so now I have like 2 free hours and I already have stuff scheduled for after, so I can go hang out with friends, go get something to eat, go work out. Like just that freedom was definitely probably the best part.
Yeah, I'd have to say, like, as a young man, I didn't go straight to college. I went to the military first, but it was completely different from what I was used to.
Yeah.
Especially growing up here, everything's very structured. Like, you can't really walk anywhere unless you live in town here.
Yeah.
Like, you have to have your parents drive you, or you have to have a car,
Yeah.
whatever. And then all of a sudden I was thrust into the city. I was in the military, but by then I'd already been in about 6 to 9 months. And I was in San Diego. I never really lived on the West Coast. I'd been there a handful of times. And I was like, wow, this is something different. I can literally, like, I'm off for the weekend, and I don't have to report to anybody for, like, 72 hours.
Yeah.
And I can just do whatever with my time. I can clean my room. I can go to the beach. I can, in any specific order I want to. Yeah, it was, like, completely different. Yeah. Now, you said you're going to be starting a work study?
Yeah.
Talk about that.
So Penn kind of pushes it really heavy to kind of do like research, either if you're doing like any science work or engineering. So I was a little late to it, which I think a lot of people shouldn't really be worried about because there's still people working in labs who are looking for people pretty late. So I'm not even fully like cleared for it. Like there's still a little bit of training, but since it's work study paid on Monday, I'm starting. It's at CHOPS, of the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
It's not actually in the hospital, but it's like one of their research facilities. So I'm going in Monday, like finishing the training and then even getting paid for it there. But just kind of working through the lab, learning from all the people there, helping like what's needed. So it's very open, and it's kind of like another class in a sense where you get paid to just learn how to work in a lab. So that's the nice part of it.
Yeah.
But
so it's like a paid internship.
Yeah, I don't think that one would have, but there's some like work studies that you can take that would count as a class credit, but you don't get paid for it then.
Okay, yeah, it's like
so
one or the other.
Yeah.
We're actually working on getting something like that started here with
Yeah.
Penn State Schuylkill and possibly Berks as well, but it would be paid and for credit preferably. So I feel like it's a lot easier for a kid to do that if you could justify because, okay, I'm getting college credit, I'm knocking out my credits, and I'm getting paid something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've, especially in the strength and conditioning world, actually one of my intern coaches that's here, she's paid. She's fresh out of college. It's really difficult to find a paid position, even with a degree already. Like they're like, oh, come in like 10 hours a week. Well, we're not going to pay anything, and you have to drive 3 hours to get here.
Yeah.
It's not really feasible and sustainable.
Yeah.
If you don't have some other outside source of income. So you started that this week or next week?
I'm going to start it Monday.
Monday, okay. And what's the resource that you use to find that? Like, they just kind of find you, or they present you a list?
Well, most colleges, Penn has this thing called CURF, Center for Undergraduate Research and Fellowship. And they also have like a student employment website that you can look for people offering work studies and stuff. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot, like the wrestling has a lot of connections. Yeah. So they talk to people about talking to other people to talk to other people, and they set up like this long chain that they'll be like, oh, you're doing mechanical engineering. We know this guy who knows this guy who knows this guy who has an internship for mechanical engineering.
So you're networked in a little bit. Being in athletics, it helps.
Yeah. Because all the wrestlers down at Penn have like a mentor who who help them get a job and help them kind of figure out what they're doing. Okay,
yeah. We have something similar in the Navy. It's called an ombudsman. They call you ahead of time before you even show up to the next command that it's your first duty station, you're a young sailor and you're moving across the country and you're going to this new ship. Okay, they give you a call like maybe 2 or 3 weeks prior. They know that you're on orders to get there. They're like, okay, do you have any questions? This is where you're going to go to check in. When you get here, I want you to come report to me. We'll make sure that you get set up with, living quarters. If you have a family, you're going to be living off base. This is where it is. This is who you need to talk to. They get you set up so that you're not floundering around like, I don't know what to do with myself. Could someone help me out here? That definitely makes the process a little bit more seamless. Yeah. Helps out. So we're going to end the show here in a little bit, but would you have, not just for people at UPenn or an Ivy League, and not just for student athletes, but for new college students, everyone's graduating this week out in the public schools, advice for new incoming freshmen before they even get there? What should they be doing now into the summer?
So kind of 3 things. The thing I mentioned earlier is like be self-aware of what's going to go wrong. So like accept that something's going to go wrong at some point and be like, even just like moving in, be like, oh, maybe I forgot like this. And then that'll kind of build you into the school year, like I said, where either your sport or maybe your school's failing because you're trying to do clubs or something like that. Yeah. Like be aware, be self-aware that something's going to slip up at some point and be ready for it. Mm-hmm. Second off, don't kind of worry about your grades. Like the big thing that they push in high school, like you get into college, and a lot of colleges, like if you go into grad school and stuff too, like and your next classes, and if you're trying to get into programs, they're looking at the work you've done and not like some random classes you took to go places. So like if you have a class that's a tough class, don't be like, wow, like I'm gonna get like a C or a B in this class, and like it's not gonna look good. And it's like sometimes that's just part of your track. Like a lot of classes that we have at Penn, they weed people out. So you take these classes, and if you drop out of the class, you change majors because they don't want people taking certain majors if they're not serious about it. Yeah. So there's going to be places like that, so you got to stick through it. And then probably third of all is be open. Meeting new people if you're not on a team. Like once you have a team, and that's you meet up over the summer, you talk to them, you meet up when school starts, and you already have a friend group. But kind of when you're going in and you're not part of a team or you're not part of like a group, the best thing you can do is just literally say hi to everyone. Yeah. Make yourself personal. And I would also, this is a big tip, is don't do it all year because you're gonna lose track of people. So like you're gonna meet people at the beginning of the year, you're gonna build friends. And then you're going to start saying random people, and then they're going to know you, and you're not going to know them. Oh, yeah. So you're going to be like, oh, what's your name? Oh, hi, how are you? Yeah. There's some studies out there. I forget what the number. I want to say it's like either 150 or 200 people that you can have like a somewhat meaningful relationship with. I think it's like 100, and then it's like less than 40 you can have like a close friendship, and then like 5 that are like is like tight. The most that you could have like best friends. Yeah. Yeah, and it's definitely true. I've been in a situation where I'm like, oh, they know my name, they know what I do, they know my kid's name. I don't know who they are. Yeah. Like I'm looking at the face, I'm like, don't got it, and I feel like a jerk. Yeah, I know a couple guys on the team who would make friends with everyone in their dorm, and then like all of their friends as friends, and then they'd be stuck like they'd be walking past people and they'd be like hi, and they'd look and they'd be like, oh, who is that? And I was like, you met them like yesterday, and they're like, I don't remember. And I was like, yeah, you need to like just settle with your friends for right now.
Yeah. Now now right now, I mean, you're mildly hurt. You're not like injured so much as you're in some discomfort.
Yeah.
Has anyone on the team dealt with an injury this year?
Yeah, especially we always joke because last year, the year before I came in, like there were like 8 guys with torn labrums.
Ugh.
Like we had a guy broke his fingers at the beginning of the year. Ugh. Came back after that, blew out his knee like during that week that he came back.
Wow. And
then came back and Tuesday broke his finger again. Mm-hmm. We had a couple more. We had like 1 or 2 torn labrums this year. We had just at Akron where I dislocated my rib, one of the guys tore his MCL and got a high sprain in his ankle just warming up.
Nice.
But I think that comes a lot more like you start to feel it, like you get beat up a lot more through the year with college. It's just a harder routine. Mm-hmm. And the coaches do take time to like even it out. Like if the trainer says like you can't practice or you need a break, you get your break. But it's just a higher intensity that sometimes you just can't do anything and something's going to go wrong. Yeah. Something's going to get hurt.
Mm-hmm. Now, I guess, and I've been in this situation. I was injured multiple times. The thing to remember is like, look, it's not over. Like, it's not the end of your career. You know, you're going to heal. Especially being in the military is a little different. You're kind of expendable piece of material. But at that level, it's important to remember that you do have a support system. You don't just get thrown away. They're going to make every effort to try to make sure that you get back on track where you need to be. The last thing you need to do is freak out. Yeah. Yeah.
Especially with the hospital right on campus. Like we have like a whole physical therapy there and everything. Nice. So, and the weight room staff is really good about like recovery lifts. The training room staff's really good. Our head coach knows like 20 people in the hospital, and he like if a kid, one of our freshmen, our 125-pounder this year had appendicitis. He just got it, walked down to the hospital, had to get it taken out, and our head coach knew like the anesthesiologist and everything, and he like set the anesthesiologist up with him to make sure like everything was gonna go okay. Yeah, which is like kind of crazy just having that connection. That a kid will go into the hospital. And I'll be like, all right, I know this doctor, so he's the one who's going to do the surgery or whatever.
Yeah. Very good. Anything that you would have done differently this year? I mean, there's always something. Or not necessarily differently, but like you definitely learned something from that for next year. Okay. Different approach.
As I said, where you're going to have, like, one thing's going to suffer. Like, that's the biggest point to take away. Yeah. Is, like, if one thing suffers, you can't let it kind of carry over. So, like, if one thing's going bad, you can't. Because I definitely, when I was, like, having a couple, like, close losses, like, I mean, part of it was, like, wrestling. Like, I was tired from working out, from losing weight. But, like, I didn't really hang out with people for, like, 2 weeks, like, my homework, I didn't do it like super late, but I just do it at like super inconvenient times. I'd do it like right before I went to sleep or something, and I had like 4 hours during the day where I didn't do it. And then once I kind of realized that I was doing that bad, I started talking to people more, like doing homework at better times, and then that's kind of when my wrestling kind of picked back up. So just kind of making sure I keep those things separate.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, Jake. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I hope that some of this material helped some people and helps some people in the future. Gives you kind of an idea so that they're not walking with their head up in the cloud, like completely lost. Because it's something that, like, I don't know what it is in high school. Like, you hear that the kid goes somewhere, and then you just don't really see him again until they come home for the summer. And like, it's almost like left behind a curtain, like what goes on when they leave. So it gives a little insight for people to, and especially for parents too that haven't had a kid leave the nest yet, kind of gives them an idea what to expect and help their kid out. Anything else you want to say before we leave?
Not really. I mean, I think also don't go in I always say don't go into college with any like expectations on what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like don't, like pretty much just like be prepared for yourself. Don't try and guess what's going to happen. Don't try and predict, because you'll be caught like way off guard at some points.
Yeah, it's out of your control.
Yeah, go in with like an open mind of what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. All right, folks. Well, real quick before we leave you, just a reminder, Fluid Fitness over here in Deer Lake, Orrisburg, Pennsylvania. We're having our strength and conditioning seminar for you high school coaches. It's the last few days to register. There's a couple spots left. Again, you can bring an athlete with you. It's a limit to one coach per one athlete. Get on it. It's a 6-hour seminar. We're going to do some lectures, PowerPoint presentations on different topics related to strength and conditioning in and out of season for your team, how to manage that. And we're going to have some practical breakouts where you actually learn hands-on from the coaches here how to work your athlete out, what to do, stretching routines, warm-ups, strength exercises, what to look for, how to fix deficiencies. So you want to get on that this Saturday, June 8th. Hope you guys enjoy the episode. Have a good day.